Hey there and welcome in to a victorious NCAA Tournament edition of the Route 1 Rundown. I'm your host, Steve Gorgie, and I'm thrilled to be with you today for my first ever live edition of the Route 1 Rundown, following Maryland's dominant 81-49 first-round victory over Grand Canyon today out in Seattle, the largest victory in NCAA Tournament history for the Terps. And what a game. What a game there for Maryland. I mean, you could not have asked for anything better after those first 4 minutes, and it was a scary first 4 minutes there of that game because Maryland came out and they didn't look good. They looked nervous. They looked a little bit rattled. They didn't look confident, but they were able to turn to their senior leader, Julian Reese, to settle them down. He came up big. He scored the first 6 points in that game. He scored 10 of their first 20, and ultimately Maryland rolled to what was really an easy breezy victory. And the word that I think of when I think of this game and my feelings throughout it was just cathartic, because it's been a week where there's been so much uncertainty around this program, with between the rumors of Kevin Willard being interested in the Villanova job, then Damon Evans looking like he is going to be the next athletic director at SMU, leaving Maryland, the power struggle between those two guys, everything Kevin Willard had to say yesterday about not having enough resources for his program and how he's trying to elevate it to the next level. It's been a week where there's so much uncertainty, and so much of the focus has been off the court. Today was a nice reminder for 2 hours of why this year has been so much fun, of why this team is so exciting, and why I've had so much fun watching this team throughout the year and have had such high hopes for what they can actually be, because this is a team, and you saw it throughout the game, this is a team that has all the pieces. This is a team that you saw it over those last 16 minutes of the first half. You saw what Maryland can do. You saw it with the guards and the shot-making ability. Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel, those guys all came up with big shots in the first half, and Miguel was a little bit more quiet. Rice, he ended up 1 of 5 from 3, but Miguel was really solid throughout. But all three of those guys in the first half had that shot-making ability on display. All three hit big shots. Julian Reese, like I mentioned, and I don't think I can say enough about this guy, he was a rock. He was able to be a guy that they lean on, because he's the only one that has NCAA tournament experience. He was able to be a guy that they lean on early in that game to score those first 6 points of the game. And yeah, he missed a couple free throws early. It was a little bit of a reversion back to what looked like his older free throw form when he was not nearly as good of a free throw shooter, but he was a guy who scored 10 of the first 20 points, and Kevin Willard was really able to rely on and lean on to give this team a boost when they needed it most. And after that, after those first 4 minutes, it was all downhill from there. It was easy. It was easy rolling from that point forward, but it's because they had a guy like Julian Reese who they could lean on. And then you saw the skill set of Derek Queen. You saw everything he can do with the post moves inside, with the way that he passes the basketball, with his intelligence, his vision, the way that he just has such a unique skill set. You saw all of that in the first 16 minutes of the game, and really throughout, or the last 16 minutes of the first half there, and really throughout that game as Maryland rolls to this 81-49 victory. So it was cathartic to see that over the course of this game, when there's been so much up in the air and so many question marks around the team over the course of this week. And we got some comments in the chat here. Appreciate everybody who is joining me live right now after this big time win. We got Brian saying, felt so different to start slow, feel the fear, then bounce back and cruise to a win. Let's go Terps. Couldn't agree with that more, Brian. Ghost of Mark Turgeonite. Chuck Barkley said we, quote, dismantled them. And yeah, that's true. Maryland did dismantle this Grand Canyon team. And I want to talk about where that really all started. And to me, it was all about the defense. This, first and foremost, to me, was a defensive effort in this game, because I watched this Grand Canyon team play the WAC championship game against Utah Valley, and I came away from that game thinking that this is a team that's very aggressive, that likes to get downhill, and can really attack the rim. The team that I saw today for Grand Canyon, it felt like a very different basketball team. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Maryland in that regard. Maryland turned them into a jump shooting team in a lot of ways. Grand Canyon ends up shooting 23 threes on the night. That was 23 of their 56 field goal attempts. Grand Canyon only made 16 shots from the floor all night long, 16 of 56 on the night, just under 29%. And I think you got to give a lot of credit to Maryland there. This guy, Ray Harrison, their point guard, in that WAC championship game, he looked like a guy who could get anything he wanted. And I get it, Utah Valley, not the level of athlete that Maryland has, but still, that's a team that went 15-1 in the conference, won the league. And Ray Harrison in that game, he goes 7 for 13. He goes off for 18 points. It seemed like he could get anything he wanted in that game. And when I was watching that game, I thought this team has some athletes. This team's really aggressive. That's their identity offensively. They did not look like that tonight. Ray Harrison was a guy you barely noticed on the floor tonight. He goes 3 of 10, 0 for 1 from the three-point line. It's just 6 points on the night. In fact, only one guy had a big night for Grand Canyon, and it's their best player, Tyon Grant Foster. He had 23 points, but nobody else had more than 6 points for Grand Canyon. Maryland dominated this game defensively and really took them out of what they wanted to do. And that was the thing that stands out most to me when I think about this game, when I think about this team, when I think about why they were able to cruise to this victory. Again, the largest margin of victory in an NCAA tournament game in Maryland history. Think about that. This is a team that has won a national championship, that's been to Final Four, that's been to many a Sweet 16. This is the game. This is the team that now owns the record for largest margin of victory in an NCAA tournament game. And it comes in a game where after the first 4 minutes, you didn't think you thought this one was probably going to be a bit of a sweat. At least I certainly did. And I think it just speaks to the confidence, the composure, and what this team is made of, that they were able to do that. And if you've been watching all year, you shouldn't be surprised, because how many times has this team taken a gut punch, whether it was against Northwestern when they hit their buzzer beater, Nick Martinelli, whether it was against Ohio State when Bruce Thornton banks in that 3 with 7 seconds to go, whether it was, of course, the Trey Holloman half-court shot, whether it was just last week when Trey Donaldson drove the length of the court to knock Maryland out of the Big Ten tournament. The Terps have responded each and every time. So it really shouldn't come as a surprise that they were able to play a poor first 4 minutes and rebound and get it together relatively quickly and end up doing what we saw them do tonight to Grand Canyon. And to me, it all started with the defense. Now, let's take a look at the comments. Got more people trickling in here. We got Zach in the chat. Is bench support on the way for the rest of the tourney? It was great to see some production from DHS. Absolutely. We got to talk about that tonight, because Deshaun Harris-Smith is a guy that came into Maryland with so much expectations, a great player in the WCAC, and now in his sophomore year, he hasn't lived up to, certainly I don't think, his expectations, to anybody's expectations, but it was great to see him tonight and the way he was able to provide a little bit of offense. And it came at an important time in the first half, actually, when he was able to go out there and get back-to-back buckets. And I want to see how many he actually ended with in this game. He ended with 11 points in this game, but he had these back-to-back buckets in the first half where Derek Queen had a great feed to him. He finished. But then on the second basket, he did a great job of getting out in transition, running the court, and finishing. And this is a guy in Deshaun Harris-Smith who I think has all of the skills, he was a great high school player. He has the physical attributes. I think what he has been lacking is confidence. Now, by no means do I expect him to go out here the rest of the tournament and score 8, 10, 12 points a game or anything along those lines. But he is a guy that they are going to need for depth purposes, especially on the defensive end, because we're going to talk about the Colorado State game a little bit later in the show, and that will be Maryland's opponent in the second round. They were the 12th seed in the region. They were the favorite in the game per Vegas. They go out and they beat Memphis. But Colorado State has an extraordinarily talented player in Nick Clifford, who Maryland is going to need all the help they can get. So I think it's going to be, you're going to need Deshaun Harris-Smith in that game. You might need Jordan Geronimo in that game. You're going to need Rodney Rice in that game. I think they are going to have to throw a lot of different things at Nick Clifford and at Colorado State, but I'm not there quite yet. I want to talk a little bit more about this Grand Canyon game, but it was absolutely great to see some scoring off the bench from Deshaun Harris-Smith, and you just hope, it would be a hell of a thing if he's able to break out in the NCAA tournament after struggling all season long with confidence, but it was great to see that from Deshaun Harris-Smith tonight. What else we got in the chat here? Chris, Grant Foster was quite a player, but we locked up everyone else. Yeah, agreed. It was on the defensive end, to me, where Maryland won this game. They locked down everyone else. And like I said, when I watched them play in the WAC championship game, this wasn't a one-man team. This wasn't a one-man show. It was not just Tyon Grant Foster and everybody else. You had Duke Brennan, their big man, who put up 16 points. He didn't do anything tonight. Maryland was able to completely lock him down. He looked completely overmatched by Julian Reese and Derek Queen, and that's the advantage that Maryland has in these games, especially against a mid-major like a Grand Canyon. Maryland has a talent advantage. Maryland has a skill advantage. And it showed tonight against a guy like Duke Brennan, who was, capable in the WAC, but looked completely overmatched against a couple of all Big Ten guys in Derek Queen, who was a first-team All Big Ten player, and Julian Reese, who's a 4-year guy. I've talked ad nauseum about what he's brought to the table with this program, sticking with it for 4 years, everything he means to this program. He was honorable mention All Big Ten this year. I thought he should have been first team on the all defensive team. He was not, but lo and behold, doesn't really matter when you show it every night like he did and what he is bringing to the table in the tournament. I thought Julian Reese was the player of the game. I'll give him my player of the game award again for what he was able to do just to stabilize this team in the early going. And then you'll look at the stat line. He was a physically dominant force throughout that whole game. 18 points on the night, 9 rebounds. The one thing I would like to see this entire team clean up ahead of this Colorado State game is the free throw shooting. 50% on the night, 12 of 24. Julian Reese, who has been so improved this season, just 2 of 6 from the line. Derek Queen, 4 of 8 from the line. Not good enough, and I really want to see that cleaned up when we head into that Colorado State game here. But I don't know whether that was just tournament nerves. I don't know what it was, but that is one area. If there's something to criticize, if there's something to say that needs to be cleaned up, to me, it would 100% be the free throw shooting here. Other things that I thought Maryland did great in this game. I thought they ran that pick and roll to perfection, and that was a big part of why Julian Reese ends up with 18, why Derek Queen ends up with 12 points in this game, 30 points combined, and Queen, 15 rebounds. Huge night for him on the boards, but I thought they were running that pick and roll to perfection, and those guys were able to really dine out in that situation. Of course, Maryland was hot from 3, 7 of 16 on the night. Nobody was excellent other than Selton Miguel, who goes 3 for 3. But Rodney Rice, he hits a big one in the first half. He ends 1 of 5. Jacoby Gillespie goes 2 of 6. But it comes at big moments. And that's the other thing I thought Maryland did really well, was those kill shots, those big runs. And a moment that really stood out to me in the first half of this game was Maryland was able to hit back-to-back threes. There was just under 5 minutes to go in the first half. And Maryland's able to push the lead up to 20 points. They hit back-to-back threes, one by Gillespie, one by Rice. Gillespie hits a step back 3 in the corner, and Rice gets out in transition and hits a 3. And to me, again, that's what makes this Maryland team so good. That's what makes them so intriguing, is you have these 5 guys. You have Julian Reese, who is able to settle this team down in the early going, and then you have these shot makers like Jacoby Gillespie, like Rodney Rice, who are able to provide you with that kind of scoring. Robbie Hummel talked about it throughout the course of the broadcast. He said, what do you take away from this team when you're scheming up a game plan against Maryland, what do you take away from them? And it's a great question. I don't know the answer to it, because if you do double Maryland's bigs, Derek Queen, such a good passer, he is going to find those open guys, and they've shown that they have the ability to make those big shots. If you play them one-on-one, like Grand Canyon did for much of the night tonight, they're going to go off for a combined 30 points. So I don't know what you take away from Maryland. And now, this is not to say that this is an unbeatable team, an infallible Maryland team. If you've been listening to the show throughout the year, I've talked a lot about the kind of teams I think give Maryland trouble, and it's teams that are long, aggressive, and athletic defensively. Those are the teams that seem to give Maryland trouble, especially on the perimeter. Those are the teams where you say, okay, this is a little bit of an issue for Maryland, especially when you make them play in the half court. Those are the teams that I get scared of. Those are the teams that I can see giving Maryland problems. But that was not Grand Canyon tonight, and I don't think necessarily that is going to be Colorado State. Now, that's not to say Colorado State doesn't do a lot of things well, because they really do. And let's get into that game a little bit, because I was able to watch that Memphis-Colorado State team. I've been able to watch Colorado State a little bit this year as well. And Chris asked about that game in the chat. And, you know, when I watch that team, when I think about Colorado State, when I watch that game, the first and foremost, the thing that stands out to me is this is a team that over the last 11 games, they've won 11 games in a row. And over the course of that 11-game stretch, they are shooting 46% from beyond the arc. And that's a really tough combination. It's a really tough thing to handle, a team that's shooting 46% from beyond the arc, especially when you pair that with a player like Nick Clifford. And if you're not familiar with Nick Clifford, he's a guy who is a 6'6" wing, and he is shooting up draft boards right now. He's a great college player. He projects as a good NBA player, and he's a guy, if you look at the Ken Pom Player of the Year rankings, he's number 7 right now. He's right there with guys like Cooper Flagg, Janai Broome, Walter Clayton of Florida, JT Toppin, Cam Jones. He's a guy who has had an exceptional offensive year, and he's been excellent over the course of the Mountain West Tournament and this 11-game win streak for them. But they are far more than that, because they're shooting 46% from beyond the arc as a team over that stretch. So Clifford, he's a guy who can shoot it 38% on the season. And then Casey Evans, their point guard, he goes off today against Memphis. He's a 44% free throw shooter, or 3-point shooter on the year, a really good 3-point shooter. He goes 6 of 9 today against Memphis. And so I thought Colorado State was good. They're certainly on a heater, and I thought they were able to expose a lot of things that Memphis doesn't do so well. Memphis was without their point guard. He's out due to injury, and they were able to expose that a little bit. They forced Memphis into a bunch of turnovers in this game. Memphis turned the ball over 16 times in that game. So I thought Colorado State did that very well. Of course, Colorado State goes 11 of 30 from beyond the arc. They do take a lot of threes. They're making a lot of threes. That's just under 37%. And Evans had an unbelievable game. And what was impressive to me was that they were down in the first half of this game. They were down early, and Nick Clifford did not have his best game. Nick Clifford, he scores 14 points in this game, but he goes 0 of 6 from beyond the arc there, and they are still able to find a way to win. And I really thought at the end of that game, find a way to win pretty convincingly. So Colorado State is a team that Maryland is going to have to lock them down from beyond the arc. They're really going to have to find a way to slow down Nick Clifford. And Clifford is a guy who does have the ball in his hands a lot. He's a wing, but when I watched them play today, he has the ball in his hands a lot at the top of the key. They get him in pick and roll situations. He's a good finisher. He's athletic. He gets to the free throw line. He got to the free throw line 10 times today. So if there's one guy on this Colorado State team that scares me, it's certainly Nick Clifford, because he's an NBA talent, but don't get it twisted. They are far from a one-man team. So when I look at Colorado State, those are the things that jump out to me. It's you got to find a way to at least slow down Nick Clifford, and you got to find a way to cool them down from beyond the arc. Now, they are far from a perfect team, though, and I think Maryland has some real advantages against Colorado State in that game because in their starting lineup, they don't have a single player over 6'8", and that showed up today because Dane Danger, a guy you may be familiar with from his time at Illinois, he's now with Memphis, and he had a great game for the Tigers. He had 22 points, he had 12 rebounds, and I thought they really struggled to contain Dane Danger. He played 40 minutes in that game. There was times he looked gassed. There was times he looked like he really couldn't give it his all, and that was slowing him down. That was the best defense on Dane Danger today, is the fact that he had to play 40 minutes in this game, and he was getting a little winded at times, but he was very effective inside against Colorado State today, and seeing that, looking at the size or lack thereof that Colorado State has, it seems like the recipe for Maryland to go out and win this game on Sunday is to feed Queen, is to feed Reese. It's to let them go to work because that's what Memphis was able to do today. Memphis, what I thought their downfall was in this game was Memphis turned the ball over 16 times. Memphis was 6 of 23 from beyond the arc, and I thought Memphis took a lot of bad threes in this game. I think Maryland is better equipped to take care of the ball against Colorado State. I think Maryland is better equipped to get better shots against Colorado State. The biggest concern for me is Nick Clifford and is slowing them down for three. The other thing I would watch for in this game is despite Colorado State lack of size, I thought they did very well on the offensive glass today. On the season, they are not a great offensive rebounding team. They're 273rd in the country in offensive rebounding percentage. But today, they were able to go out and grab 13 offensive boards, and they came at very opportune times. So that's the other thing Maryland's going to have to watch out for. Today, I thought Maryland started off terribly on the offensive glass, honestly. I wrote it down here. I want to see if I can find it. At the under 16 timeout, Grand Canyon was up 5-3 in offensive rebounds. Now, Maryland changed that in pretty short order because the game ended 13-13 in offensive rebounds, and I thought Maryland just got it together overall after that first, 4-minute stretch there. That was something, though, that early on I took notice of. It wasn't good enough, but it improved as the game went on, and it's something that Maryland is going to have to offensive rebound a lot better, and like they did, over the last 36 minutes of the game or so, if they're going to keep Colorado State off the glass. I was impressed with Colorado State today. Despite what their numbers say on the season, I was impressed with the way that they were able to hit that offensive glass despite their lack of size. And it was across the board. You look at it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different guys grabbed at least one offensive rebound for Colorado State. So it's going to be on the whole team. It's going to be on Jacoby Gillespie. It's going to be on Rodney Rice, Selton Miguel. And of course, it's going to be on those bigs to make sure Maryland is able to keep Colorado State off the offensive glass, because offensive rebounding, it's so much of it is a mindset. So much of it is effort. And I think that's something that Maryland has been a little bit inconsistent with at times. We saw Maryland really take it to Michigan on the offensive glass in Ann Arbor, and then Michigan gets the better of Maryland on the offensive boards at the Big Ten tournament. So it's something that Maryland has been a little bit up and down with this season. You look at the numbers on the season and it looks really good, or it looks good. Maryland's a good offensive rebounding team, not a great offensive rebounding team. So that's definitely something I'm watching for in that Colorado State game. What else do we have in the chat here? Zach says, effort early was terrible. Reese picked them up and then overall turned it around, of course. Yeah, I can't say enough. I'm harping on this a lot, but I think it deservedly so. Julian Reese kept Maryland in that game early, and that's why senior leadership, it's why having a 4-year guy, it's why having a rock like Julian Reese is so important, and that's what I've been calling him all year long. He is a rock for this program. He is a rock for this team. And for him to just be able to settle that team down when he did not have the greatest start in the world either. He missed those 2 free throws in the first 4 minutes, and just the team as a whole, 3 turnovers, 2 missed free throws, a missed layup in those first 4 minutes. He was a guy who they were then able to lean on, and he could say, all right, guys, I got this. I'm going to settle us down. 10 of the first 20 points for Julian Reese. Just a huge day from him. So I can't say enough about what Julian Reese has brought to this team, has brought to this program all year long, and what he was able to do today. That's exactly why you want a 4-year player, you want a senior in your lineup for moments like this. When things are rocky, when things are rough, he is a guy you can lean on. I also think Jacoby Gillespie has been that kind of guy all season long, and I think he's kind of strangely taken a little bit of flack for some of Maryland's end of game situations. Yes, against Michigan State, I thought he took that shot too early and it wasn't the greatest shot. Of course, that was the missed shot that then led to Michigan State getting the ball and Trey Holloman hitting that half-court shot. So I think certainly you can question some of the decision-making there. I think earlier in the year against Oregon, he had some questionable decision-making maybe at the end of the game, if I remember correctly. And against Washington on that losing road trip, he just did not play very well in that game. But over the course of the season, to me, Jacoby Gillespie has been a guy that you can absolutely trust and count on. And I think he is a huge part of this reason when this offense is crisp, when this offense is effective. He is a huge part of that. And I talked earlier about those back-to-back threes that Gillespie and Rice hit. But Gillespie, like you almost take it for granted, the fact that he is able to just step back and hit a corner three, or he's able to get out in transition and hit a corner three, or he's able to get to the rack and get an and one like the way he was able to at one point in the first half. I think it was about midway through the first half to put Maryland up 18-12. He goes and he gets the bucket, he gets fouled, he hits the free throw, and Maryland's up 18-12, and you're able to breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief. So I think it's Jacoby Gillespie, I think it's Julian Reese. I think those two guys deserve a ton of credit for steadying Maryland today, for saying, hey guys, we got this. We've been here. This is a team that has been through a lot, that has shown a lot of composure throughout the season, and I think they showed some composure again tonight. What else do we got in the chat here, guys? Like, how is everybody out there feeling after this game? Is it exhilaration? Is this? I get it. It's Grand Canyon, but is this a game that makes you feel, okay, this Maryland team can really go on a run, or is this still like a one step at a time thing? Because to me, this is everything that I think Maryland can be when they're at their best. And I know it's Grand Canyon. I know you have to take that with a grain of salt. But I just thought it was so reassuring to see after this week of uncertainty, of this week with, we're talking more about what's going on in the athletic department and behind the scenes and the future of Maryland basketball, and whether Kevin Willard is even going to be here or if he's going to leave for a Big East job in Villanova. There was so much talk about that I felt like it was cathartic. I felt like it was reassuring, and I felt like it reminded me personally of why I was so excited on Selection Sunday to watch this team and to see what they can do in the tournament. And after watching them today, like, I do believe that certain teams change when they get to the tournament. Some teams wilt when they get to the tournament. Some teams don't look good. And between what Maryland was able to do to Illinois in the first round, the quarterfinal there of the Big Ten tournament, which was an absolute thrashing, what Maryland was able to do to Grand Canyon today, an absolute thrashing, I just don't see that with Maryland. I see Maryland as a team that is as ready as any to compete in the NCAA tournament. It didn't feel like outside of that first 4 minutes, what Maryland is, what their identity is, how they play, none of that seemed to change outside of that rough first 4 minutes of the game. And that's a really reassuring thing to me. So how are you feeling? How is everybody out there who's listening? How are you feeling about Maryland making a run after this game? Like, do you think now, and of course you got to take it one game at a time, but do you feel more confident after this game that Maryland has a shot at upsetting Florida? Is the expectation now that Maryland gets to the Sweet 16? Because that was always my expectation, personally. I thought Maryland should be a Sweet 16 team. I thought it before the bracket came out. I think now, I thought it as soon as the bracket did come out. I think it now after today. The expectation to me is that Maryland gets to the Sweet 16 this season. And look, Maryland has had a lot of success in first round games. Maryland has made the second round in 16 of their last 17 NCAA tournament appearances. The only one, and that dates back to 1998, the only one of the last 17 NCAA tournament appearances that they did not make the second round was 2017 when they lost to Xavier. And that was Melo Trimble's last NCAA tournament. I know Maryland has had a lot more trouble in second round games. There's been brutal second round games over the course of the years. Going back all the way to 2004, they lose to Michigan State in a 2003 rather, Michigan State in a Sweet 16 game. That was the year that Drew Nicholas hit the buzzer beater in the first round against UNC Wilmington. They beat a good Xavier team with David West, longtime NBA player David West, and then they play Michigan State. Steve Blake has a look at it at the buzzer, doesn't fall. So going back to that, right, 2003, then 2004, they lose to a Syracuse team in the Sweet 16. 2007, a Butler team, and it's a close game, and there was a block charge call that went against Maryland in that game. And then, of course, how can you forget, it's coming up in the chat, Michigan State, the Corey Lucius shot in 2010. West Virginia in 2015. That was Turgeon's first tournament back, and then finally Maryland broke that Sweet 16 drought in 2016, beating South Dakota State and Hawaii en route to a Sweet 16, and Maryland hasn't been back since. It's been, we're coming up on 10 years since Maryland's been to a Sweet 16, but there have been a lot of tough second round losses over the years. In the last couple of years, losing to Alabama a couple times in the second round, but those games were never really truly competitive or games you thought they had a chance to win. A lot of those other games that I'd mentioned, those were 5-4 matchups. Maryland has been in this 5-4 game so many times, and very, very rarely has Maryland gotten an upset on the other side and, played a 12 seed. And I get it. Colorado State was favored in that game. I thought they were very even. I thought watching the game, Colorado State looked like the clearly better team. Now, maybe it's different if Memphis has Hunter, their point guard, in the lineup. Maybe things look different then because Memphis had a really good season. PJ Haggerty is a very, very good player, prolific scorer on that team. Dane Danger is good inside, as you saw today, but Colorado State, still a 12 seed, still out of the Mountain West, still a team, all due respect to the Mountain West, but still a team that has nobody in their starting lineup taller than 6'8". Still a team that Dane Danger torched today for 22 points. So this is a little bit of a different scenario than a lot of these 4-5 games Maryland has been in over the year. All due respect to Colorado State, but if you're asking me, would I want to play a team like a Michigan State or a Syracuse over the years compared to this Colorado State team? Look, I get it, they're hot. I get it that they're very good. I get it that they can beat anybody. But this is a little bit of a different scenario than I think some of those years. And my expectation, as good as Colorado State has been playing, my expectation is that Maryland should go out and win this ball game and get to a Sweet 16. And then I hate to use the term house money, but then you get a shot at Florida, and you want to see them be competitive in that game. You want to see them win that game, certainly, but it is a little bit of a house money type of feeling where you at least get a shot at one of the one seeds, Florida, who's just playing as well as anybody in the country. But my expectation is that this team is a Sweet 16 team, and I think Florida presents some unique challenges if Maryland were to get there. They're a team that is huge. They're a team that can match Maryland's size. They're a team that has really good guards. Walter Clayton, one of the best players in the country. He's an experienced senior guard. This is a very, very talented Florida team. They can go 5 out. They have size. They just do a lot really well, and I don't know if there's anybody playing better in the entire country than them right now. Let's take a look at the chat again. What's going on here? All right, we goes to Mark Turgeonite. One step at a time. Falling short of the Sweet 16 will be a disappointment for what this team is capable of. Completely agree. I could not agree more. This team has shown time and time again over the course of this season that it's a team that can get to the second weekend, that it is a team that has all the pieces. There are not too many teams in the country with two bigs like Julian Reese and Derek Queen, with guards with the shot-making ability of Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, and Selton Miguel. There are not a lot of teams that feature all of that. So to me, Sweet 16 is the expectation. Zach says we're matchup dependent. Like you said, aggressive teams on defense and good offensive rebounding teams pose a challenge. I do like how Willard allows teams to play relaxed overall. Yeah, I think this team has a great mindset, and you got to give Kevin Willard a lot of credit for the way he was able to put this team together, because last year, I thought it was very obvious and very clear that the entire season could have been different if Maryland had one more shooter, or I shouldn't even say one more shooter, a shooter on the team, because Jameer Young and Julian Reese, that's quite a combo. That's quite a guard-big combo. And to play the way that they did, to shoot as poorly as they did over the course of the season, to not make the NCAA tournament, to end the season with a losing record, that was extraordinarily disappointing. And I think you got to give Kevin Willard a lot of credit for putting this team together, for going out and identifying pieces that they could get. And I say that specifically because there's been so much talk this week about the NIL budget, and Kevin Willard was able to find guys that he could get, and he hit on all of them. Selton Miguel hit. Rodney Rice hit. Jacoby Gillespie, that's more than a hit. That's Jacoby Gillespie is the kind of hit you get when you're playing blackjack and the dealer is showing a face card and you have a 15 and you just have to hit to try to get your way to 21 and you get a 6 and you win the hand. That's the kind of hit Jacoby Gillespie is for what he's been to this program this season, and the fact that there's a good chance he's going to be back for another season, knock on wood here, hopefully, depending if they can get the NIL situation correct. So you got to give Kevin Willard a ton of credit for that, and I think you have to give him a lot of credit for how he has handled this team and the fact that they do look so composed, that they do seem to have this innate ability to bounce back when things aren't going right. Again, how many times have we seen this team just lose in the most devastating situation, in the most devastating way? 4 times. Their last 4 losses. Buzzer beater at Northwestern. Bruce Thornton banks in a 3 for Ohio State. Trey Holloman hits a half-court shot, and Trey Donaldson drives the length of the court. Those are Maryland's last 4 losses. And Andy Katz brought up that after the last 3 losses, Northwestern, Ohio State, and Michigan State, the Terps were able to run off 4 in a row after this. He brought that up to Derek Queen in the postgame, and what a story that would be if Maryland, following this most recent loss to Michigan, was able to run off 4 in a row and get to the Final Four. But overall, I mean, I'm trying to think back here at all of my years watching Maryland basketball, if I can ever remember a more dominant, a more satisfying win in the NCAA tournament. Satisfying is probably not the right word. There's some more satisfying wins, no doubt. Getting to the Maryland's first ever Final Four in 2001, extraordinarily satisfying. Winning a national championship, there's nothing more satisfying. But as dominant as a win as I've seen by a Maryland basketball program in a situation like this in a long, long time. And this is a Grand Canyon team that last year won an NCAA tournament game, that beat St. Mary's in the NCAA tournament as a 12 seed. This is a good program that has had success. So I don't think it can be overstated what Maryland did here tonight. I mean, look, even Maryland's Final Four team, 2001, anybody who's been watching Maryland a long time remembers George Evans, George Mason's big man, who was, I think, pretty close to 30 years old at the time. It was one of those situations, and he gave Maryland all they could handle in the first round of that game, of that season, or that tournament rather. And Maryland goes on to make the Final Four that year. So even in a Final Four season, Maryland struggled in the first round. It was not a game like this. It was not the dominant performance this was. So I sit here today as somebody who's watched Maryland basketball for a long, long time, and you think about everything that was going on in the lead up to this game this week, and I couldn't be more pleased. I couldn't be more happy, and I couldn't be more excited about what is next for this team in this NCAA tournament. It's just a really fun night to be a Terps fan. That's the show for today. Really appreciate everybody tuning in for this instant reaction live post-game show after Maryland dominates Grand Canyon 81-49. We don't have a game time yet for the Colorado State game, but whatever time it is, I will be going live again immediately following this game. I'll be going live on Twitter. I'll be going live on YouTube again. So make sure you check out the Department of Hoops, a DMV Media Network. If you're watching me on YouTube right now, you're already there, but make sure you subscribe. There's a ton of great content. We got Terps content. We got mid-major hoops content. We got Wizards content. So make sure you are subscribing over there. You can see everything we're doing, and I will be going live again on Sunday after the Colorado State game. You can also watch this on Twitter. My handle there, @Gorgon Sports. That's my handle all across the internet. So make sure you're following me there as well. Live tweeting during games, giving you all of my college basketball thoughts all throughout the day, all throughout the week. Thanks so much for tuning in. This was a ton of fun, and I will talk to you all on Sunday. Until next time, this has been the Route 1 Rundown.